I still remember the sound of that Zoom notification, the little ding that meant everyone had joined. 14 executives. Evan, my boss, sitting dead center on the screen like some smug ringmaster. And me, nervous but ready, because I thought I was presenting the quarterly results. He let me talk for maybe 30 seconds before interrupting me mid-sentence. "Claire," he said, with this exaggerated sigh, "we need to address your performance before we waste any more of the team's time." I froze. Everyone else froze, too. I glanced around at their little faces in their little boxes, all those muted cameras, polite smiles fading. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Evan smiled the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "You've become a liability, Claire. The last campaign nearly cost us a major client. Your mismanagement was unacceptable." It felt like someone had punched me through the screen. I tried to explain to defend myself, but he just kept talking, cutting me off, twisting everything I'd done into something ugly. Every good decision became a mistake. Every success became luck. Then came the line that burned itself into my brain. "I can't have incompetence representing me in front of our clients. Effective immediately, you're terminated." The silence that followed was worse than the firing itself. No one said a word. 14 people just watched. Some turned off their cameras. And then click. The meeting ended. My email locked me out within minutes. My project files disappeared. All I could see was my own reflection in the black Zoom screen. I didn't even cry at first. I just sat there, shaking, like my body couldn't catch up to what had just happened. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from one of my coworkers. "I can't believe he did that after what you covered up for him." That's when I realized something way deeper was going on. I stared at that message for a long time, my mind racing backward through the past few months. All those late nights when Evan had left early to handle strategy, leaving me to fix his mistakes. All those presentations I'd polished while he took the credit. My hands were still shaking as I picked up my phone and started scrolling through old work messages. There had to be something I'd missed, some clue that would explain why he'd gone nuclear on me like that. 3 weeks before that Zoom call, I was the only person in the department working past 9 at night. Evan had left early to handle strategy, which was code for leaving me to fix the mess he made. I was editing reports, triple-checking numbers, trying to make sure the campaign wouldn't flop, again. Evan was charming, the kind of guy who knew how to flatter people upward and stomp on everyone below him. I was the opposite, quiet, methodical, the person who just made things work. But lately, I could feel something shifting. He'd started ignoring me in meetings, using my ideas without credit, and worst of all, spreading these subtle rumors, like that I was hard to work with or emotionally reactive. One night, I overheard him laughing on a call with another manager. "Claire's good, but she's replaceable," he said, like I was a broken stapler. That's when the first crack formed in my faith in him. I remember going home and telling myself, "You're overreacting." But deep down, I knew I was being set up for something. A week later, I found out what. I was reviewing a presentation Evan sent to our biggest client, the one I'd built from scratch. Except he'd changed half the numbers to make it look like the campaign had performed better than it actually did. I confronted him privately. "You can't falsify data, Evan. It's not just unethical, it's traceable." He laughed. "Relax, Claire, it's called selling the story. Nobody wants the truth if it's ugly." But it backfired. The client noticed inconsistencies and called him out. Instead of owning it, he blamed me, said I was the one who compiled the wrong metrics. The next day, I got a calendar invite. Performance review, all executives present. Martha, one of the senior VPs who'd always been kind to me, pulled me aside. "He's setting you up," she warned quietly. "Document everything." I nodded, but I didn't fully understand how bad it was going to get. That night, I started taking screenshots of everything, emails, file histories, even chat logs. Something in my gut told me I'd need proof later. The review was a circus. Evan started the meeting by saying he was concerned about my behavioral pattern. He painted this elaborate picture of me as someone who refused feedback, alienated clients, and jeopardized the brand's integrity. I sat there, stunned, as executives nodded along. He had prepared slides, with cherry-picked emails, screenshots out of context, even private messages that made me look defensive. Every time I tried to clarify, he interrupted. "Don't make excuses, Claire. This is constructive feedback." At one point, he leaned closer to his camera and said softly, "Don't fight this. You'll only make it worse." I left that meeting with my stomach in knots. When HR called later that day, their tone told me everything. "It might be best if you resigned voluntarily, for your record." I refused. And that's when the real isolation began. I could feel the walls closing in around me. My desk suddenly felt like an island in the middle of the office. After that, everything changed. My name vanished from email chains. My projects were reassigned to redistribute workload. My calendar suddenly emptied. When I joined meetings, Evan would talk over me or forget to unmute me. My coworkers stopped making eye contact, probably afraid they'd be next. The only one who still spoke to me was my assistant, Jenna, who whispered one morning, "He's been using your presentations under his name. I saw the files." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. All those nights I'd stayed late to make him look good, all those times I'd defended him, and now he was gutting me in front of everyone. I went home that night and stared at my reflection, wondering how someone could destroy your whole career just because they felt threatened by you. And then, a new email pinged on my screen. From Evan. "Zoom meeting, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Mandatory attendance, executives only." Something in my chest tightened. That Zoom meeting was my execution. Evan opened with his fake corporate smile and thanked everyone for joining on short notice. Then he looked at me. "Claire, let's be direct. Your actions have damaged this company's credibility. We can't move forward with you here." I tried to speak. He muted me, literally muted me. 14 executives watched it happen. A few shifted uncomfortably. No one stopped him. He read from a prepared statement, legal, cold, and ended with, "Effective immediately, you're terminated." Click, meeting over. I stared at my own reflection for a long time. Then my computer went dark, account locked, files gone. 10 minutes later, Jenna texted, "He just copied all your campaign folders to his drive." I felt sick. I didn't cry until I had to pack the box on my desk. The security guard avoided my eyes while he walked me out. That night I lay awake replaying every second, wondering how one person could twist reality so easily, and why no one had said a word. The next few weeks blurred together. Recruiters stopped replying. Friends at work stopped texting back. My reputation had evaporated overnight. Unemployment barely covered rent. I canceled my gym membership, lived on cheap noodles, and watched my savings drain. Then, out of nowhere, a call from an unfamiliar number. "Claire, it's William Turner from Pacific Brands. You built our launch campaign last year." I sat up. "William, hi." He laughed. "I heard you left Vanderfield. Any chance you're freelancing? We need an audit done fast." Freelancing? I hadn't thought that far, but I said yes. I needed the money and maybe a reason to get out of bed. The project was small, just a campaign performance review, but it reminded me of who I used to be. I worked late into the night, running numbers, building clean reports, finding patterns nobody else had noticed. When I sent the final presentation, William called me within an hour. "This is incredible work, Claire. Seriously, I'm passing your name around." William's project was small, but it reminded me who I was when I wasn't surviving. I poured everything into it. Cleaner data, sharper visuals, real results. When we wrapped, William emailed, "You're a lifesaver. Expect calls. People are asking who fixed our mess." He wasn't kidding. 2 more clients came that week. I spent nights working at my kitchen table with cheap coffee and a half-broken laptop, rebuilding something that looked suspiciously like confidence. A month later, an email landed in my inbox. Subject, Horizon Strategies, consultant position. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But it was real, a mid-sized consulting firm that specialized in corporate turnarounds. They wanted someone who understood marketing operations inside and out, someone who could diagnose problems fast and fix them faster. The job description could have been written about me. I applied that night, attaching the portfolio I'd been quietly building through my freelance projects. 3 days later, they called me in for an interview. Horizon's office was sleek and quiet, nothing like the chaos I'd come from. Cynthia Lee, the CEO, interviewed me herself. "Your name came up twice this week," she said, smiling. "People say you fix problems no one else can see." I told her the truth, about the firing, about Evan. I expected that to kill the opportunity. Instead, she nodded. "Sounds like you were the only adult in the room." I started as a senior consultant. The difference was night and day, respect, collaboration, no games. Cynthia's only rule was simple: deliver honesty, even when it hurts. 3 months in, Horizon landed its biggest contract of the year, a full corporate audit and restructure. When the client's name flashed across the screen, my stomach dropped. Vanderfield Marketing. Cynthia caught my expression. "Problem." I hesitated. "I used to work there." She smiled. "Then you'll know exactly where to look." I tried to protest, but she waved me off. "Claire, this isn't personal, it's business. You're the best fit." That night I stared at the project file, Evan's name still listed as department head. My hands actually shook. I'd imagined seeing him again 100 times, but never like this. The kickoff meeting was set for Monday. At 9 a.m., I walked into Vanderfield's boardroom in a tailored blazer that fit better than the old one I'd been fired in. Evan was mid-sentence, charming a few executives. Then he looked up. His face froze. I sat down at the head of the table. "Good morning, everyone," I said. And to him, "Evan, let's begin." The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop when I sat at that table. Evan's smirk cracked for maybe half a second before he pulled it back together. "Claire," he said tightly, "didn't expect to see you again." I smiled. "Same, I'm leading the Horizon team for your audit. Let's catch up on what's changed since my exit." The executives exchanged looks. They all remembered the Zoom call. Suddenly, Evan's confident tone faltered. "Sure, let's do that." I didn't gloat, not yet. I just watched him squirm while I took notes. Every word, every defensive answer went into my file. Inside, my heart pounded. Outside, I looked calm. He'd taught me that mask. Now I wore it better than he ever could. I knew where to dig. Evan's department had grown bloated and inefficient. He'd been approving unnecessary budgets and claiming team successes as his own. But I didn't accuse him. I asked questions. Quiet, polite, surgical questions. Who signed off on this? Was there an oversight committee? Interesting, and this data came from where exactly? My Horizon team noticed the pattern quickly. One of my analysts whispered, "He's either lazy or hiding something." By week 2, even the executives were asking for updates directly from me instead of him. And Evan hated it. He started showing up late to meetings, interrupting me mid-sentence, throwing passive-aggressive comments like confetti. I ignored them all. One night, I stayed late finishing reports. I caught my reflection in the window, tired, older, stronger. That office had been a grave once. Now it was my battleground. Out of nowhere, Jenna appeared in the doorway. "Claire." I froze. She'd been my closest ally until she wasn't. She looked uneasy. "Can we talk?" We sat in the break room, the same one where I used to cry after Evan's tirades. She took a deep breath. "I'm sorry. He told us you were leaking data. I believed him." I didn't say anything. Then she whispered, He's been manipulating everyone. Half the team's afraid of him. That's when I knew Evan's house of cards was shaking, and I didn't have to push. I just had to wait. Jenna slid a folder across the table. I kept copies of things, just in case. I opened it. Inside were emails, approvals, budget requests, all with Evan's signature, all suspicious. "Why now?" I asked quietly. She met my eyes. "Because you deserved better, and so do we." 2 days later, one of my analysts flagged an expense pattern in Evan's department, duplicated vendor invoices, all routed through a consultant no one could verify. I didn't accuse, I documented. Line by line. We discovered the consultant didn't exist. It was a shell name. Cynthia called me that night. "Are you sitting on something big?" "Potentially fraud level big," I said, "but I need proof." She trusted me completely. "Get it quietly. We'll escalate when you're ready." For 2 weeks I played it cool. Meetings, smiles, small talk. Meanwhile, I traced every invoice. The deeper I dug, the clearer it got. Evan had been funneling company funds to prop up fake contracts, padding his department's success rates. And if this was true, his career was about to implode. I cross-referenced payment dates with project timelines. Nothing matched. The consultant billed for work during months when no projects existed. It was brazen, almost stupid, like he thought no one would ever check. Friday afternoon, I printed the findings, neatly bound, evidence highlighted. At the weekly review, I walked everyone through the irregularities. Evan's face went pale. He tried to interrupt. "This is a misinterpretation." I kept talking. "Each vendor ID links back to a single P.O. box. Guess whose name is on the registration?" Silence. His voice cracked. "You can't prove intent." "Not yet," I said. "That's why we're recommending a full forensic audit, effective immediately." The executives whispered among themselves. Cynthia nodded slowly. "Approved." Evan looked like he'd been punched. I gathered my papers and left without another word. In the hallway, I finally exhaled. For the first time since that humiliating firing, I felt the scales start to tip. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Men like Evan don't crumble quietly. They fight. And he was about to. I could see it in his eyes, the desperation, the rage barely contained beneath that corporate smile. It didn't take long. The Monday after the audit announcement, rumors started flying. Someone had accused Evan unfairly. Someone had leaked internal data. Then HR called me in. They'd received an anonymous complaint about me. "Allegations of misconduct," the HR rep said, flipping through papers. "Conflicts of interest with vendors, inappropriate communication." My heart sank. It was a mirror of what he'd done the first time. But this time, I wasn't powerless. I smiled politely. "You'll find those claims are fabricated. I'd be happy to provide the audit trail that disproves them." I emailed Cynthia the evidence before I even left the room. Within an hour, she replied, "Don't worry, Claire. We know exactly what this is." Evan was swinging wildly, and every punch made him look guiltier. The HR rep looked uncomfortable as I walked them through my documented timeline, showing exactly where I was and what I was doing during every alleged incident. "This will be dismissed," she said quietly. By week's end, the forensic audit was in full swing. Every transaction, email, and document in Evan's department went under review. He stopped showing up to meetings, then started CCing executives on random emails accusing my team of bias. Cynthia called me into her office. "He's panicking," she said. "That means we're close." Still, part of me ached. I'd spent years in that company. Watching it rot from the inside felt tragic. But the rest of me remembered that Zoom call. How it felt to be silenced, humiliated, erased. Now, he was the one being cornered by his own words. Justice wasn't loud, it was quiet, patient, precise. I spent my evenings reviewing audit documents, triple-checking every detail. My apartment had become a war room, papers spread across my dining table, coffee cups stacked by my laptop. I was tired, but I was also more focused than I'd ever been in my life. This wasn't just about Evan anymore. It was about everyone he'd hurt. Just when I thought I'd seen it all, Evan pulled one last stunt. A file appeared in the audit folder, doctored screenshots that supposedly showed me forging signatures on expense reports. He actually fabricated evidence. Except he made a rookie mistake. The metadata showed they were created on his laptop 2 days earlier. I took the file straight to Cynthia. She stared at it, then looked up at me. "Unbelievable," she muttered. "He's self-destructing." She picked up her phone. "Get legal in here, now." That night, as I walked to my car, I saw Evan across the parking lot. He yelled after me, "You think you've won? You're nobody without me." I didn't even turn around. Because for the first time, I realized I didn't need to. His words echoed across the empty parking lot, desperate and hollow. Security was already heading his direction. I heard them ask him to leave the premises. I got in my car and drove away, hands steady on the wheel. A week later, Horizon presented the audit findings to Vanderfield's board. Cynthia led, but I handled the financial section. Every line was airtight. I watched the executives' faces shift from confusion to shock to fury as the numbers spoke for themselves. Fraud, falsified reports, and unethical conduct, all traceable to one department head. Evan tried to interject, voice cracking. "This is a vendetta." I met his eyes and said calmly, "The data doesn't lie." Silence, then the board chair cleared his throat. "Mr. Shaw, you're suspended pending further investigation." He turned pale. For a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The board dismissed him from the room. As he gathered his things, his hands were shaking. Martha, the VP who'd warned me months ago, caught my eye across the table. She nodded slowly, and I could see relief in her expression. Later, she pulled me aside. "Thank you," she whispered. "We knew something was wrong but couldn't prove it." You'd think that was the end. It wasn't. Vanderfield decided to restructure after the audit. They wanted new leadership, someone from Horizon to help transition the team. Cynthia offered me the position. "You don't have to take it," she said softly, "after everything he did." I smiled. That's exactly why I should. 3 months after that Zoom firing, I walked back into the same office as interim head of operations, this time under Horizon's management contract. People whispered when I passed. Some apologized, some couldn't meet my eyes. Evan's office was empty, his nameplate gone. But something told me he wasn't finished yet. He'd lost his title, his money, his control. And men like that don't go quietly. I spent my first day back meeting with team members one-on-one, listening to their concerns, understanding what had been broken. The damage ran deeper than I'd realized. Things were finally quiet. Too quiet. Then Jenna messaged me one night. "You should know, Evan's been talking to the press." He'd leaked a fake story claiming Horizon, planted, the audit to poach Vanderfield's clients. Anonymous sources, misleading quotes, it had all the signs of his manipulation. I took a deep breath. The old me would have panicked. The new me opened my laptop. I sent Cynthia a detailed timeline, proof of every step we'd taken, every timestamp, every signature. Then I called an old contact at a business journal and gave them the real story. Facts only, documents attached. By the next morning, the truth was everywhere. Whistleblower uncovers internal fraud at Vanderfield. Audit clears consultant of false claims. Evan had tried to use the media as a weapon. He'd handed me the microphone instead. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, colleagues, even former clients reaching out with support. The narrative had finally shifted. The fallout was brutal. Vanderfield's board issued an official statement clearing Horizon and condemning Evan's conduct. He showed up at the office the next day, red-eyed and furious, demanding to speak to someone in charge. Security escorted him out. But as he passed me in the lobby, he stopped. "You think you've won," he hissed. "You're just their pawn, you'll see." I didn't reply. He was talking to a ghost, the version of me he'd fired, humiliated, broken. That woman didn't exist anymore. 2 days later, Cynthia called me in. "The board wants you full-time, permanent director of operations." My throat tightened. "Wait, at Vanderfield." She smiled. "Yes, they want new leadership. You've already proven you can run it better than anyone." I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. The same company that had escorted me out was now begging me to stay. "I'll do it," I said finally, "but on my terms." My first official day, as their new director, was poetic. The same floor, the same conference room. Different nameplate. 14 executives sat at the long glass table, the same ones who'd watched me get fired. This time, I was at the head. I started the meeting with a smile. "Good morning, everyone. Let's talk about rebuilding trust." Not one person interrupted me. As I laid out the new strategy, I saw quiet admiration replace awkward guilt. And when I finished, they applauded. Actual applause. Afterward, one of them approached me, a VP who'd stayed silent that day on Zoom. He said softly, "I should have spoken up. I'm glad you came back." I smiled. So am I. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it was happening. Team members who'd been afraid to share ideas started speaking up in meetings. The atmosphere slowly shifted from fear to collaboration. Jenna became my right hand, helping implement new processes. Evan's final collapse came quickly. The forensic report confirmed full-scale fraud, falsified data, fabricated vendors, misuse of funds. He lost everything. His title, his severance, even his professional license. When news broke, people who'd once avoided me started sending messages. Apologies, congratulations, admissions they'd known something was wrong but didn't have the courage to speak. I didn't respond to most. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. But a week later, I got an email from Evan himself. Just one line. "If you ever cared about this company, don't let them destroy what's left." I read it once, then deleted it. Because he'd already done that. 3 months later, I stood in that same boardroom again, this time presenting annual projections. Revenue was up, morale was high. And for the first time in years, the place felt alive. People were excited about their work again. The toxic culture Evan had built was finally being replaced with something healthier. After the meeting, I took a quiet walk past my old cubicle. The sunlight hit differently now. It wasn't about power anymore, or even justice. It was about peace. I'd thought revenge would feel like fireworks. But it felt more like sunrise, calm, inevitable, deserved. Before leaving, I paused by the window overlooking the city and whispered, "Thank you, Evan." Not because he deserved it, but because without his betrayal, I never would have found my strength. That was the real victory, not becoming his boss. Becoming my own. I looked at my reflection in the glass, no longer the broken woman who'd been publicly humiliated, but someone who'd rebuilt herself from nothing. Someone who'd turned her darkest moment into her greatest transformation. Martha appeared beside me. "You're doing incredible work, Claire." I smiled. We all are. And for the first time in years, I believed it. The company was healing. I was healing. And that Zoom call that had destroyed me, it had actually